The sound of Beth's laughter drifting through our kitchen window at 2 in the morning wasn't what woke me up. It was the cruel edge to it, the kind of laugh that cuts through your chest and settles somewhere dark in your gut. I'd been hearing that laugh a lot lately, usually when she thought I wasn't listening. My name is Eddie Parrish, and 3 months ago I thought I had it all figured out. 38 years old, co-owner of Parrish Electrical Supply with my older brother John, married to the woman who used to be the love of my life, father to twin 16-year-old daughters who still occasionally admitted they were related to me. We lived in Millbrook, Massachusetts, one of those New England towns where everybody knows everybody's business, whether you want them to or not. That night, lying in our king-sized bed that had started feeling more like a battlefield, I listened to Beth stumble through the front door with her usual entourage. Sierra Martinez, her real estate agent best friend who could sell ice to Eskimos and spread gossip twice as fast. Aaron Walsh, the gym buddy who documented every moment of her life on social media like she was auditioning for reality TV. Eddie's probably asleep, Beth said, her voice carrying that new tone she'd developed, part dismissal, part contempt. He goes to bed at 10 like an old man. The three of them giggled like teenagers. But there was something different about it tonight, something meaner. I stayed perfectly still, listening to them raid our liquor cabinet. My liquor cabinet, technically, since I'd been the one paying the mortgage and bills while Beth pursued her self-discovery journey that apparently involved a lot of spa weekends and girls' trips I wasn't invited to know the details about. "I still can't believe you actually said that to him," Sierra whispered, though her whisper could probably be heard in the next county. Right to his face. What was I supposed to do? Beth's voice had that edge again. He asked where I was going, like he owns me. I told him the truth. I don't need his permission for anything anymore. My hands clenched into fists under the covers. Last weekend, when she'd announced another spontaneous trip to visit her college friend in Vermont, I'd made the mistake of asking basic questions. When would she be back? Could she call the girls while she was gone? Did she need me to pick her up from anywhere? Apparently, caring about your wife's whereabouts made you controlling. The look on his face, Aaron added, and I could practically hear her grinning. I wish I'd gotten it on video. "Next time," Beth said, and they all laughed again. Next time, like humiliating me had become a regular form of entertainment. I heard them moving around downstairs, the clink of glasses, the scrape of chairs being pulled out from our dining room table. Our table, where we used to eat family dinners and help the girls with homework and plan vacations we'd never take now. "So when are you going to tell him about John?" Sierra asked, and my entire world tilted sideways. John. My brother John. "Soon," Beth said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "We're just waiting for the right moment. John thinks we should wait until after we get the business paperwork sorted out." The business paperwork. Parrish Electrical Supply, the company our father had started 40 years ago, the company John and I had built into the most successful electrical supply business in 3 counties. The company that was supposed to be our legacy. "Is Eddie going to fight you on it?" Aaron asked. "What's he going to fight with?" Beth laughed that cruel laugh again. "John's got the military background, the business connections, the respect around town. Eddie's just Eddie. He fixes other people's problems and makes sarcastic comments. John's the one with the vision." I lay there in the dark, listening to my wife discuss my inadequacies with her friends, and felt something cold and sharp settling in my chest. Not heartbreak. I'd passed that station weeks ago. This was something else, something that felt like clarity. They talked for another hour, their voices getting louder and more careless as they worked through my expensive scotch. I learned that Beth had been finding herself in John's bed for the past 3 months. I learned that they'd been planning to push me out of the business and use my own home as collateral for their expansion plans. I learned that my daughters had been asking Beth why Daddy seemed so sad lately, and Beth had told them I was going through a difficult phase. Like discovering your wife and brother were planning to steal your life was just some minor inconvenience I needed to work through. When they finally stumbled upstairs, Beth didn't even try to be quiet. She crashed into our bedroom, reeking of alcohol and someone else's cologne, John's cologne, I realized now, and collapsed onto her side of the bed without even looking at me. "I know you're awake," she said to the ceiling. I didn't respond. "We need to talk soon, Eddie. About us, about everything. Still nothing from me. You can't just ignore this forever. Things are changing whether you like it or not." I turned over, putting my back to her, and listened to her breathing slow down as she passed out. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the wall and felt that cold, sharp thing in my chest grow bigger and more focused. By morning, I had a plan. I'd always been an early riser, but that Tuesday I was up before 5, moving through our house like a ghost. Beth was unconscious upstairs, Sierra had passed out on our couch, and Aaron was curled up in the guest room. My house had become a sorority, and I was the unwelcome parent. The first thing I did was make coffee. Strong coffee. The kind that could wake the dead or, in my case, fuel a man who was about to systematically dismantle his old life to build something better. Parish Electrical Supply was a 15-minute drive from our house, located in a converted warehouse on the edge of Millbrook's small industrial district. John and I had bought the building 5 years ago and turned it into something we were both proud of: office space up front, warehouse and workshop in the back, and a small fleet of work trucks parked in the fenced lot outside. I'd always gotten to work first. John was more of a 9-to-5 guy, despite his constant lectures about military discipline and leadership. But that morning, I noticed his truck was already in the lot. Interesting. I let myself in through the back entrance and moved quietly through the warehouse. The lights were on in the front office, and I could hear voices. John's voice and a woman's voice that wasn't Beth. I crept closer, staying in the shadows between the tall shelving units loaded with electrical supplies. Through the glass partition that separated the warehouse from the office, I could see John sitting behind his desk, the bigger desk, the one he'd claimed when we'd moved into this building because he was the senior partner. The woman sitting across from him was Linda Brennan, our accountant. She had a laptop open and several file folders spread across the desk between them. "The transfer should be straightforward," Linda was saying. "Once you have Beth's signature on the house papers, you can use the equity as collateral for the business loan. Eddie's name comes off everything, and you'll have full control of Parish Electrical." John leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. "And he won't be able to fight it?" "Not if Beth cooperates. As his wife, she has legal claim to half of everything, including his share of the business. If she signs it over to you as part of a divorce settlement, Eddie won't have much recourse." "What about the girls?" Linda shrugged. "Child support will come out of whatever settlement Eddie gets, assuming he gets anything." They both laughed, and I felt that cold thing in my chest turn into something hotter, something that felt like pure, focused rage. I backed away from the office, moving carefully through the warehouse until I reached the rear exit. Then I got in my truck and drove home, my mind racing. Beth was awake when I got back, sitting at our kitchen table in her robe, looking hungover and irritated. Sierra and Aaron were gone, probably fled to avoid the awkwardness of facing me in daylight. "We need to talk," she said, without looking up from her coffee. "Do we?" "Don't be difficult, Eddie. This is hard enough already." I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "What's hard? Cheating on me with my brother or trying to steal my business?" She looked up then, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or fear. "I don't know what you think you heard." "I heard enough." I kept my voice calm, conversational. 3 months, right? That's how long you and John have been planning this?" Beth straightened in her chair, and I saw her expression shift from defensive to something harder. "We didn't plan anything, Eddie. It just happened." "Right. And Linda Brennan just happened to be at the office at 6 in the morning, just happened to be discussing how to use our house as collateral to push me out of my own company." Now she looked genuinely scared. "You were at the office?" "I'm always at the office early, Beth. You'd know that if you paid attention to anything about my life." She stood up, wrapping her robe tighter around herself. "Look, Eddie, I know this is hard to understand, but John and we connect in ways that you and I never did. He gets me. He sees my potential." "Your potential for what? Destroying everything we built together?" "We didn't build anything together." The words came out louder than she'd intended, and she glanced toward the stairs, probably worried about waking the girls. "You built a business with your brother. You bought a house and filled it with furniture and expected me to be grateful. But you never asked me what I wanted." "What do you want, Beth?" "I want to matter. I want to be part of something important. John has plans, real plans, for expanding the business. He wants to make me a partner." I almost laughed. "A partner? Beth, you don't know the first thing about electrical supply. I know about business. I know about marketing and customer relations and..." You know about spending money and looking good at PTA meetings. Her face flushed red. See? That right there. That's why this isn't working. You don't respect me. You never have. I respected you enough to work 60-hour weeks so you could stay home with the girls. I respected you enough to put your name on the deed to this house, on our bank accounts, on everything we owned together. Turns out that was a mistake. Beth sat back down, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but somehow more final. I've already talked to a lawyer, Eddie. I'm filing for divorce next week. John and I are going to buy you out of the business and start fresh. With what money? With the equity in this house. With my half of everything we own. I nodded slowly, like I was considering this. And the girls? They'll stay with me, of course. John's great with them. He'll be a better father figure than their actual father? Than their father who works all the time and barely talks to them anymore. That one hit home, and she knew it. I'd been working more lately, staying at the office later, finding excuses not to come home to the Cold War my marriage had become, but I'd been trying to save something that was already gone. So, you've got it all figured out, I said. I think it's best for everyone. I finished my coffee and stood up. Well, Beth, I appreciate you being so direct about it. Really clears things up. She looked suspicious. You're taking this awfully well. What's the point of fighting the inevitable? I headed for the door, then turned back. Oh, and Beth? You might want to call John and tell him I know about your little meeting with Linda Brennan. Just so he doesn't waste any more time planning my demise. I left her sitting there and went to work, but I didn't go to Parish Electrical. Instead, I drove to the other side of town, to the office of Carl Robertson. Carl had been our business manager for 8 years, ever since John and I had gotten big enough to need someone to handle the administrative side of things. He was also the closest thing I had to a real friend, a guy who understood the difference between loyalty and convenience. Eddie, he said when I walked into his small office above the hardware store. You're here early. Everything okay? Everything's about to change, Carl. And I need to know if you're with me or against me. He gestured for me to sit down. Talk to me. So I did. I told him about Beth and John, about their plans for the business, about the meeting with Linda Brennan. Carl listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every detail. Son of a gun, he said when I finished. John always was a jealous bastard, but this… Can they do it? Legally? Carl was quiet for a long moment, thinking. If Beth files for divorce and claims half of everything, including your share of the business, yeah, they probably can. Especially if they can prove the business is worth more with John as the sole owner. And is it? Hell no. John's good at talking and glad-handing, but you're the one who knows the actual business. You're the one with the relationships with suppliers, with the big contractors. John thinks he can coast on charm and military stories, but this isn't the Marines. I leaned forward. So, what can we do about it? Carl smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Well, that depends. How far are you willing to go? The first rule of small-town warfare is that information is ammunition. The second rule is that timing is everything. Carl and I spent the next 3 days gathering intelligence, and what we found was better than I'd hoped. John had been sloppy, arrogant, really. He'd been using company resources for personal expenses, charging romantic dinners with Beth to the business account, even booking hotel rooms for their little getaways on the company credit card. He'd also been inflating his hours and claiming overtime for days when Carl's records showed he'd left early. But the real goldmine was his relationship with our biggest client, Morrison Construction. John had been telling everyone that his military connections and natural leadership had landed us the Morrison account. The truth was more complicated. Tom Morrison's been calling you directly for 6 months, Carl told me, showing me the phone logs. Every time there's a problem, every time they need a rush order, every time they want to negotiate pricing. John takes credit in the meetings, but you're doing all the actual work. Can we prove that? I've got phone records, email threads, even some recorded calls where Tom specifically asks for you by name. Carl grinned. John's been taking credit for your relationships while planning to stab you in the back. That's not going to play well with the business community. The other thing we discovered was that Linda Brennan had a history of helping business partners screw each other over. She'd been involved in 3 similar cases in the past 5 years, always working for the partner who was willing to pay her under-the-table fees for creative accounting. She's not just unethical, Carl said. She's stupid. She's been using the same playbook every time. There's a pattern here that a good lawyer could tear apart. By Friday, I was ready to make my move. But first, I had to deal with the home front. Beth had been avoiding me all week, which was fine by me. She'd taken to staying out late with her friends and sleeping in the guest room when she bothered to come home at all. The girls had noticed the tension but hadn't asked direct questions yet. I was hoping to keep them out of this mess as long as possible. Friday night, Beth came home around 10 with Sierra and Aaron in tow. I was in my home office, supposedly working on invoices, but actually listening to them settle in the living room with a bottle of wine. "So, when's the big confrontation?" Sierra asked. "You can't keep avoiding Eddie forever." "I'm not avoiding him," Beth said. "I'm just waiting for the right moment." "The right moment for what?" Aaron's voice was sharp with curiosity. "John thinks we should wait until Monday. He wants to present Eddie with the buyout offer and the divorce papers at the same time. Get it all over with at once." "That seems kind of harsh," Aaron said, though she didn't sound particularly concerned about harshness. "It's business," Sierra said. "Clean and professional." "Eddie will probably be relieved, honestly. He's been miserable for months." "Has he?" Beth's voice was thoughtful. "I mean, I know he's been distant, but I thought that was just Eddie being Eddie." "Beth, honey," Sierra's voice took on that patronizing tone she used when she was about to deliver what she thought was wisdom. "Eddie's a good guy, but he's not ambitious. He's not a leader. John is. You're trading up." "I know that. It's just..." "Just what?" "Nothing. You're right. This is better for everyone." I closed my laptop and headed upstairs, but not before stopping in the kitchen to leave a little surprise for Beth. I'd printed out copies of John's expense reports, highlighted all the personal charges he'd been billing to the company. I left them on the counter with a note. "Thought you should know what kind of business partner you're getting." Saturday morning, I was up early again, but this time I had company. Carl met me at the office at 6 a.m., and we spent 2 hours going through files, making copies, and preparing for what was coming. "You sure about this?" Carl asked, as we loaded boxes of documents into his car. "I'm sure about not letting them steal everything I've worked for," I said. "Beyond that, we'll see." At 8 a.m., John's truck pulled into the parking lot. He was alone, which surprised me. I'd expected him to bring backup for the big confrontation. He walked into the office like he owned the place, which I guess he thought he did. "Eddie," he said, nodding at me. "Carl, didn't expect to see you here on a Saturday." "Catching up on paperwork," I said. "You know how it is." John sat down behind his desk and pulled out a manila folder. "Actually, that's good. Saves me a phone call. We need to talk." "About what?" "About the future of this business. About your marriage. About what's best for everyone involved." Carl and I exchanged a look. "Here we go." "I'm listening," I said. John opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "Beth's filing for divorce. I'm sure that doesn't come as a surprise. What might surprise you is that I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer for your share of Parish Electrical." He slid a paper across the desk. I looked at it without picking it up. $50,000, I said. "For half of a business that's worth at least $400,000. "For half of a business that's going to be worth a lot less without the right leadership," John corrected. "Let's be honest, Eddie. You're good at the technical stuff, but I'm the face of this company. I'm the one with the vision, the connections, the ability to take us to the next level. Is that what you think? It's what I know. And it's what Beth knows, too. She's tired of being married to someone with no ambition, no drive. She wants to be with someone who can give her the life she deserves." I picked up the buyout offer and pretended to study it. "This is interesting, John. Really creative accounting. Did Linda Brennan help you come up with these numbers?" Something flickered in his eyes. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do. You've been planning this for months, maybe longer. The affair with Beth was just the personal side of it. The real prize was always the business, wasn't it?" John leaned back in his chair, and his expression shifted from fake concern to something colder. "You know what your problem is, Eddie? You think being smart makes you important. But smart doesn't mean shit if you can't lead people. Smart doesn't mean shit if you can't inspire loyalty." "Loyalty," I repeated. "That's an interesting word choice. I've got the respect of our clients, our suppliers, our employees. When people think of Parish Electrical, they think of me. Do they?" I nodded to Carl, who pulled out his phone and hit a button. Tom Morrison's voice filled the office, tinny but clear through the speaker. Is Eddie Parrish available? I've got a problem on the Riverside project and I need someone who actually knows what they're talking about. John's face went white. That was Tuesday, Carl said. Want to hear Wednesday's call? He played another recording. Same client, same request for me specifically. Or Thursday, another recording. This time it was Janet Walsh from Walsh Brothers Contracting asking for Eddie Parrish, not his brother. I need someone who can solve problems, not just talk about them. I stood up and walked around the desk, leaning against the edge so I was looking down at John. Here's what's really interesting, I said. I've been going through our client files this week. Turns out almost every major account we have has my name on the contact sheets, not yours. My phone number, my email address, my relationships. John's jaw was tight. That doesn't mean anything. It means everything. Because when word gets out that you've been trying to steal the business from the guy who actually runs it, those clients are going to have some very interesting conversations with their lawyers. I picked up another folder from Carl's stack and dropped it in front of John. Speaking of lawyers, you might want to call Linda Brennan and let her know that her creative accounting services won't be needed anymore. Turns out, using company funds for personal expenses is considered embezzlement in Massachusetts. Who knew? John opened the folder and saw copies of his expense reports, every personal charge highlighted in yellow. You're a bastard, he said quietly. No, John. I'm your brother. Or I was, until you decided to screw me over for a woman and a business you don't even understand. He stood up fast, his chair rolling back and hitting the wall. For a second, I thought he might take a swing at me. Carl tensed, ready to step in. But John was smarter than that. Or maybe just more of a coward. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, then turned back. You think you've won something here, Eddie? Beth doesn't want you. She never did. She's been faking it for years, just waiting for something better to come along. Maybe. But she's not getting my business. And after this gets around town, she's not getting yours either. John slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Carl whistled low. Well, that went better than expected. Phase 1, I said. Now comes the fun part. Word travels fast in a town like Millbrook, but gossip travels faster. By Sunday afternoon, half the town knew that Eddie Parrish had caught his wife cheating with his own brother, and the other half knew that John Parrish had been stealing from the family business. By Sunday evening, everyone knew both stories, and the details were getting more creative with each telling. I spent Sunday at home with my daughters, Beau and Bree. They were 16, old enough to sense the tension, but young enough to hope it might blow over if they ignored it hard enough. We ordered pizza, watched movies, and pretended everything was normal. Beth didn't come home Saturday night or Sunday. I didn't ask where she was. Monday morning, I got to the office early again, but this time I wasn't alone. Tom Morrison was waiting in the parking lot, along with Janet Walsh and Mike Sullivan from Sullivan Electric. 3 of our biggest clients, all looking serious. Eddie, Tom said as I unlocked the front door. We need to talk. We went inside and sat around the conference table in the front office. I made coffee while they settled in, their expressions grim. We've been hearing stories, Janet said without preamble. About you and John. About problems with the business. What kind of stories? The kind that make us worry about our contracts, Mike said. The kind that make us wonder if we need to start looking for new suppliers. I poured coffee and sat down across from them. What do you want to know? We want to know if Parrish Electrical is going to be around next month, Tom said. We want to know if the guy we've been working with for 5 years is going to disappear in some family drama. The guy you've been working with isn't going anywhere, I said. But there are going to be some changes. I spent the next hour explaining the situation. Not the personal details. They didn't need to hear about Beth and John's affair, but the business side. John's attempt to force me out, his financial irregularities, his plans to restructure everything. So what happens now? Janet asked. Now John's out. I'm buying out his share of the business, and Carl's going to be my new partner. Everything else stays the same. Can you afford to buy him out? I can afford not to, I said, and I've got some leverage he doesn't know about yet. They seemed satisfied with that answer. We spent another hour going over their current projects and future needs. By the time they left, I felt confident that the business side of my life was secure. The personal side was about to get more complicated. Beth showed up at the office around noon, looking tired and angry. She'd clearly heard about my weekend activities. "We need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway of my office. "Make an appointment," I said without looking up from my computer. "Eddie, I'm serious." "So am I. This is a place of business, Beth. If you want to discuss our personal situation, we can do it at home. If you want to discuss the divorce, call my lawyer." "You hired a lawyer?" "Saturday afternoon, right after your boyfriend tried to steal my company." She came into the office and closed the door behind her. "John said you threatened him." "John lied. I presented him with evidence of his embezzlement and gave him a chance to walk away quietly. He chose drama instead." Beth sat down across from my desk, and I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen in months. Uncertainty. "Eddie, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry, Beth. I'm done." "What does that mean?" I finally looked up from my computer. "It means I'm not fighting you on the divorce." "You want out?" "Fine. But you're not taking my business with you, and you're not using my house as collateral for whatever scheme you and John are cooking up." "That's not. We weren't trying to steal anything from you." "Really?" Because Linda Brennan seemed to think otherwise. Beth's face went pale. "You talked to Linda?" "I didn't have to. Carl recorded your little meeting last week. Amazing what people will say when they think nobody's listening." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said finally. "How was it supposed to happen?" "I don't know. Cleaner, I guess. Less messy." "You mean less public. You wanted to destroy my life quietly, so you wouldn't have to deal with people taking sides." "I didn't want to destroy your life, Eddie. I just wanted to start over. With my brother. Using my money." She looked up at me then, and I saw tears in her eyes, but they looked more like frustration than regret. "You don't understand what it's like," she said. "Being married to someone who's given up. Someone who comes home every day and just exists. John has dreams, Eddie. He has plans. John has delusions, and now he's unemployed." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I bought out his share of the business this morning. He's got until Friday to clean out his office." Beth stood up fast, her chair scraping against the floor. "You can't do that." "I can, and I did. Turns out embezzlement voids partnership agreements. John's lucky I'm not pressing charges. This is insane, Eddie. You're destroying everything out of spite. I'm protecting what's mine." "There's a difference." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out her next move. "The girls won't understand this," she said finally. "They love their uncle. They love the uncle they thought they knew. The one who didn't try to steal their father's business and break up their family. You're going to turn them against me." "I don't have to, Beth. You're doing that all by yourself." She left without another word, slamming the door behind her. Through the window, I watched her get into her car and drive away, probably heading straight to wherever John was hiding out. Carl came into my office a few minutes later, carrying a stack of papers. "John's lawyer called," he said. "They want to negotiate." "Nothing to negotiate. He's out." "What about Beth?" I leaned back in my chair and thought about it. "Beth's going to be a problem. But not the kind of problem I can't handle." "What do you want me to do?" "Keep documenting everything. Every call, every meeting, every conversation. And start putting together a list of character witnesses." "For what?" "For when this gets ugly. Because it's about to get very, very ugly." That evening, I got home to find my daughters waiting for me in the kitchen. They both looked serious, the way teenagers do when they're about to ask questions you don't want to answer. "Dad," Bo said, "we need to talk." I sat down at the table with them, noting that Beth still wasn't home. "What's going on?" Bree asked. "Mom's been acting weird all week, and now Uncle John won't answer our texts." I looked at my daughters, smart, perceptive kids who deserved better than the mess their parents had made, and tried to figure out how much truth they could handle. "Your mom and I are getting divorced," I said, "and your Uncle John is no longer part of the business." "Because of the affair?" Bo asked quietly. So they already knew. Of course they did. In a town this size, secrets were just gossip that hadn't spread yet. "Partly," I said, "but mostly because of choices. Your mom made some choices and I made some choices, and now we have to live with the consequences." "Are we going to have to move?" Bree asked. No. This is your home. That's not changing. What about Mom? Your mom is going to have to figure out what she wants. But whatever happens between her and me, you two are the most important thing in my life. That's not changing either. They seemed satisfied with that answer, at least for now. We ordered Chinese food and spent the evening talking about school, about their friends, about anything except the war that was about to consume our family. But I knew it was just the calm before the storm. Beth and John weren't going to go quietly, and I wasn't going to let them destroy everything I'd built. The real fight was just beginning. The town festival was always held the second weekend in October, when the leaves were at their peak and the weather was still warm enough for outdoor events. Main Street would be closed to traffic, local businesses would set up booths, and half the county would show up to eat fried dough and pretend they were still living in a Norman Rockwell painting. This year, the festival felt like a stage set for the final act of my marriage. Beth had spent the week trying to rally support, calling mutual friends and painting herself as the victim of my controlling and vindictive behavior. Some people bought it. Others had heard enough details about her affair with John to take my side. Most just wanted to stay out of it, which was fine by me. John had been making noise about suing me for wrongful termination, but his lawyer had gone quiet after Carl sent over the evidence of his embezzlement. Apparently, even lawyers have limits when it comes to defending the indefensible. Saturday morning, I was manning the parish electrical booth with Carl, handing out promotional materials and talking to potential customers. It was good for business and good for my public image, the hard-working local businessman carrying on despite personal troubles. Around noon, Beth showed up with Sierra and Aaron in tow. They'd positioned themselves at the craft booth directly across from mine, where Beth could be seen by everyone who stopped to talk to me. She was playing the part perfectly, brave smile, elegant composure, just a hint of sadness around the edges. The wronged wife, holding her head high despite her husband's cruelty. She's good, Carl muttered, watching Beth charm Mrs. Henderson from the library. I'll give her that. She's had practice, I said. Around 2 o'clock, John finally made his appearance. He'd brought backup, 2 guys I recognized from Murphy's bar, the kind of guys who thought loyalty meant agreeing with whoever was buying the drinks. John walked straight up to my booth, his buddies flanking him like bodyguards. Eddie, he said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, we need to settle this like men. I looked up from the electrical catalog I was showing to Mike Sullivan's wife. I thought we already did that, John. You're out of the business, and I'm keeping what's mine. Pretty settled from where I'm sitting. You screwed me over, John said, his voice getting louder. You used technicalities and lawyers to steal my half of Dad's business. A crowd was starting to gather. This was exactly what John wanted, a public confrontation where he could play the victim. Dad's business? I stood up, keeping my voice calm. Funny, I don't remember Dad charging personal expenses to the company credit card. I don't remember him billing the business for hotel rooms with other men's wives. John's face went red. You're a bastard. No, John. I'm your brother. The brother you tried to screw over for a piece of ass and a business you never understood. One of John's friends stepped forward. You better watch your mouth, Parrish. Carl moved to stand beside me. And you better watch yours. This is a family matter. Family? John laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Eddie doesn't know the first thing about family. You want to know why Beth came to me? Because she was tired of being married to a cold, selfish bastard who cared more about his business than his own wife. The crowd was getting bigger now, and I could see people pulling out phones to record the drama. This was going to be all over social media within the hour. Is that what she told you? I asked. Did she mention that she's been planning to divorce me and steal half my assets for months? Did she mention that you were just the means to an end? That's not true. Beth's voice cut through the crowd. She was pushing her way forward, Sierra and Aaron right behind her. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. Should we ask Linda Brennan? I've got her on tape discussing how to use you to push me out of the business. Beth's face went white. You recorded a private conversation? I recorded a business meeting about my own company. Amazing what people will say when they think they're among friends. I hit play, and Linda Brennan's voice filled the air, tinny but clear through my phone's speaker. Once you have Beth's signature on the house papers, you can use the equity as collateral for the business loan. Eddie's name comes off everything, and you'll have full control of Parish Electrical. The crowd was dead silent now, everyone straining to hear. "And he won't be able to fight it?" John's recorded voice asked. "Not if Beth cooperates. As his wife, she has legal claim to half of everything, including his share of the business." I stopped the recording and looked around at the faces surrounding us. Some shocked, some disgusted, some just fascinated by the drama. "So there it is," I said. "The truth about why my wife suddenly fell in love with my brother. It wasn't romance, it was a business transaction." Beth was crying now, but they looked like angry tears rather than sad ones. "You don't understand," she said. "You never understood. I needed more than what you were giving me." "You needed my money and my business," I said. "Everything else was just window dressing." John stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something here? I think I've protected what's mine. The business, the house, my daughter's future. Everything you and Beth tried to steal. Your daughters?" Beth's voice was sharp now. "You think they're going to choose you after this? After you humiliated their mother in front of the whole town? I think they're going to choose honesty over manipulation. But we'll see." John took another step forward, and I could see he was losing control. "You always thought you were better than me. Dad's favorite son, the smart one, the responsible one. But you know what? I'm the one Beth chose. I'm the one she comes to when she needs a real man. You're the one she used to try to steal my life." There's a difference. That's when John snapped. He came at me with his fists up, and for a second I thought I was going to have to fight my own brother in front of half the town. But Carl stepped between us, and Tom Morrison grabbed John's arm. "That's enough," Tom said firmly. "This is a family festival, not a boxing match." John shook him off, but the moment had passed. He looked around at the crowd, at the phones recording everything, at the faces staring back at him with a mixture of disgust and fascination. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice had lost its edge. "Yes, it is," I said. "Go home, John. Take Beth with you. Start your new life somewhere else because you're done in this town." They left together, Beth still crying, John still muttering threats, Sierra and Aaron trailing behind like confused disciples. The crowd began to disperse, people breaking into small groups to discuss what they'd just witnessed. Carl clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, that was dramatic." "It was necessary," I said. "Now everyone knows the truth." "What happens next?" I looked around at the festival, at the normal families enjoying a normal Saturday afternoon, at the life I was fighting to preserve. Now we go back to work. We rebuild. We move on. But I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. Beth and John were humiliated, not defeated. Humiliated people do desperate things. The real ending was still coming. 2 weeks later, I got the call I'd been expecting. "Eddie?" It was Bo, and she sounded scared. "Dad, you need to come home. Mom's here, and she's acting really weird." I was at the office, working late on a big order for Morrison Construction. "Weird how?" "She's packing stuff, and she keeps talking about how we need to come with her. She says you're dangerous, and we're not safe here anymore." "Where is she now?" "In the living room." "Dad, she's really upset. She keeps saying things about lawyers and custody and how you're going to try to turn us against her. I'm on my way. Don't let her take you anywhere, okay? Just stay calm and tell her I'll be there in 10 minutes. I hung up and grabbed my keys. Carl looked up from his desk. "Problem?" "Beth's at the house. She's trying to take the girls. Want me to come with you?" "No. This is family business. But if you don't hear from me in an hour, call the police." The drive home felt like the longest 10 minutes of my life. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Beth's car parked sideways across the front walk, like she'd been in a hurry. I found them in the living room. Beth was stuffing clothes into a suitcase while Bo and Bree sat on the couch, looking confused and frightened. Beth looked up when I walked in, and I saw something wild in her eyes. "You're not taking them from me," she said. "I won't let you poison them against me the way you poisoned the whole town." "Nobody's taking anyone anywhere," I said calmly. "Beth, you need to slow down and think about what you're doing." "I am thinking. I'm thinking about my daughters and what's best for them. And what's best for them is getting away from you." "Dad," Bree said quietly, "we told her we don't want to go." Beth spun around to face them. "You don't understand what he's capable of. You didn't see what he did to me at the festival. The way he humiliated me, destroyed my reputation, turned everyone against me. You did that to yourself, Bo said, and I heard an edge in her voice that reminded me of myself. We heard the recording, Mom. We know what you were planning. Beth's face crumpled. I was trying to build something better for all of us. John and I, we had plans. Real plans. We could have been happy. You could have been rich, Bree corrected. There's a difference. You don't understand, Beth said again, but she was crying now. You're just kids. You don't know what it's like to be trapped in a marriage with someone who doesn't see you, doesn't appreciate you, doesn't love you the way you deserve to be loved. I sat down across from my daughters, keeping my voice gentle. Beth, I did love you. Maybe not the way you wanted to be loved, but I loved you enough to work myself to death trying to give you everything you said you wanted. I loved you enough to put your name on everything I owned. I loved you enough to forgive a lot of things I probably shouldn't have forgiven. But you didn't love me enough to fight for me when I started pulling away. No, I admitted. I didn't. Because I thought you were pulling away from me, not planning to destroy me. We sat there in silence for a moment, the weight of 16 years of marriage settling between us like dust. It doesn't matter now, Beth said finally. It's too late for all of that. It's too late for us, I agreed, but it's not too late for you to do the right thing. Sign the divorce papers, take your settlement, and start over somewhere else. Let the girls stay here where they belong. And if I don't? I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the coffee table between us. Then this gets filed with the court on Monday morning. Beth opened the folder and saw copies of bank statements, credit card bills, hotel receipts, and phone records. Everything documenting her affair, her financial planning with John, her attempts to use the girls as weapons against me. You've been building a case against me, she said. I've been protecting my family. There's a difference. She closed the folder and looked at our daughters, really looked at them, maybe for the first time in months. Do you hate me? She asked them. We don't hate you, Mom, Bo said, but we don't trust you anymore. And we don't want to leave Dad. Beth nodded slowly, like she was finally accepting something she'd been fighting for weeks. Okay, she said. Okay. She signed the papers that night. Full custody to me, a fair but not generous financial settlement, and an agreement to leave Millbrook within 30 days. I never saw John again. I heard he moved to Florida, where he got a job selling insurance and married a divorced real estate agent with 2 kids of her own. Beth moved to Boston, where she got an apartment in Back Bay and a job at an art gallery. She calls the girls every Sunday and they visit her once a month. The business is thriving. Carl and I bought out a competitor last year, and we're opening a second location in Springfield. Tom Morrison still calls me directly when he has problems, and Janet Walsh still refuses to work with anyone else. My daughters are seniors now, both planning to go to college next fall. They're smart, tough kids who learned some hard lessons about loyalty and consequences. They still love their mother, but they understand the difference between love and trust. As for me, I'm exactly where I always wanted to be. Running a successful business, raising my daughters, living in the town where I grew up. The only difference is that now I know the price of complacency, and I know the value of fighting for what matters. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how things ended, if I wish I'd handled it differently. The answer is no. Beth and John made their choices, and I made mine. They chose betrayal and greed. I chose to protect what was mine. In the end, that made all the difference.